Kanoa Lloyd, welcome to the Effin News.
Thanks for having me. This is so wild.
Yeah, well, people won't know, but this is obviously the old project studio where you spent 7 years working every day.
Yeah, every single day. Yeah. I think it's a bit like going back to your old school or something. Like everything looks familiar but slightly wrong.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's cool to see great stuff being made in here.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And I don't even know where to begin, but tell me about your new role? Tell me about your new life. Like, I don't even want to say the words, there's 2 of them, but you are now a
yoga teacher.
So cool.
It is really cool, and it's just kind of a part of what I'm doing, because basically once I ended this full-time job and was like, okay, I'm going to be a freelancer and I'm going to work in production, the spaces in between the work were very quiet and my brain was very loud because when you don't have the distraction of work and all the other things, I didn't jump into a booze bottle or anything, so all of a sudden I'm left with my loud thoughts about who am I, what do I want to do now, and I started thinking about the places that I felt most comfortable and at ease, and that for me was the yoga studio. And so a teacher training came up and I was like, wow, I've got nothing else in my calendar, let me go and do this. And I'm so glad I dove into that world because it's just, it's brought me a great deal of comfort, and it's really helped me kind of figure out the sort of human I want to be in this new role. Yeah,
and I know you well, so I can tell that you look amazing. I can just see it, and your aura is incredible.
Yes.
So whatever it is, it's working. But I want to take you back, and I know we've said that this is the old studio, and people are so familiar with you from hosting the project. But what were things like for you behind the scenes or behind the veneer at that time, because it was not easy. In fact, it sucked at times for you.
Yeah, I mean, there were all sorts of things that went on, online bullying and hate stuff, covering really big emotional stories. Just a lot of stress that you take on because that's what you're there to do. You're there to help other New Zealanders understand these big, yucky things. But I think a bit of that does sort of wear on you. And so, there were definitely times when before the lights went up and before the cameras were rolling that I would just be a heap in my brain, and then you turn it on because that's what you've got to do. But there was a lot of stress being in front of New Zealand 5 nights a week, for sure.
Yeah, and it's taken time to get past that, do you think? Longer than you would have expected, or what?
It's definitely taken time, but I look back at something like the Treaty Principles Bill and what was going on in Aotearoa while that was being kicked around. And I felt so grateful that I could just experience that moment in New Zealand history as a mum, as a Māori woman, take my daughter, I took her out to Ihumātao to meet up with the hikoi, send in a submission on behalf of my whānau and just be kanoa and not be having to digest that, put aside my rage and my heartbreak that of course I was experiencing as that conversation was going on. I could just be a human being and not have to package that up and turn it into something for other people to consume as a piece of news.
Yeah, and you would have found that intensely difficult by the sounds of things to do that, to just be a sort of person that relays things and leaves it all behind.
Yeah, because sometimes you do have to put aside the personal in order to present something that makes sense.
Totally.
Sometimes the way you feel about the news and situations that are going on in the world doesn't make sense, and then to have to turn that into a bite-sized piece that helps others understand, that's a really big piece of work. And there have been times when, I've been really grateful that I don't have to do that piece of work anymore. I can just feel my feelings.
Yeah, you can be you and with the Treaty Principles Bill and being Māori, that was a big part of things, and being a mum.
Yeah, totally. And I could show up for my daughter, who's very young, but, try and explain that for her, connect with my brothers and sisters about what we were going to say for our submissions and like how we were engaging with the kaupapa, and focus on that and not have this kind of newsy voice in the back of my head like, oh, my sister Hene Aorangi is down in Wellington. I wonder if I could get her to send us some footage, I could just be like, yes, fly the flag for our family. And that was it.
Yeah, and in terms of, you mentioned before online bullying, being out of that, because I don't think people who aren't in the public eye would realise that, for a woman in particular, and I even guess potentially for a Māori, that there is a lot of this online bullying constantly around you, like rust, I guess. What's it like not having that?
It's really, really lovely. I mean, I know it still exists, and, I've seen female MPs in Parliament talk about the kind of stuff that they are dealing with just as a routine part of existing in a space like that. And I really relate to a lot of what they shared. It's like some people get a kick out of telling you that you shouldn't exist and you shouldn't take up space and you shouldn't be having an opinion. And, the logical part of you knows they're sad and they need some better things going on in your life. But it takes a toll. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. And there were definitely times when I felt properly scared, when people... when people who I have very different feelings from started to say things like, I know where you work, I know where you live, whether that was true or not, it felt real to me and it felt really scary. And that was just because of the job that I was doing.
And these, for people who don't understand, these are sexist and racist largely, aren't they? So you kind of get both ends of it, like, in some ways.
Yeah, all the good stuff, all the pretty stuff. A lot of racist stuff and misogynist comments and I don't know, just the lurking sometimes of just knowing that people are watching you who are not watching you because they think you're a crack up or because they're interested in what you have to say, but they're watching you to take you down. That's not a nice feeling.
Yeah, sorry to take you back to all this. It's sort of like...
It's all right. I'm very zen now, Paddy.
Yeah, I'm sort of like literally dragging you back to the very spot where a lot of this happened. Like going, relive it please for me, Lloydie. Relive it for me.
Yeah, no worries.
But how have you found getting out of that and making such a massive change? Because we live in a society now where so many people have change forced upon them, like redundancy, which you've faced. And people have no choice but to change and try and find something positive. You've done that. How did Kanoa Lloyd do that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think working in the media and the way that all the redundancies and changes rolled out across media, I'll put my hand up and say there was a moment there where it felt like all this stuff was just happening to us and to my mates. But that's not true. There are so many changes going on in the entire landscape of New Zealand through sports and politics and business and all sorts of things. And I see it again and again that people are having to, find ways to deal with these huge changes. For me, I used to literally sit in the studio and say, I hate change, like if something was different in the schedule or somebody was away and there was a person filling in for that. I would literally be like, I hate change. And I think that's quite a normal human response. But for me, what I've discovered is that just being really curious about the change, gathering information about what's different, what's going on, and curious about my reaction to it has made me feel so much more comfortable with it. The way that I think of it is like I'm growing like a mushroom now instead of a tree. So a tree, and we were a bit like this, working in news, you're shooting for the most light, you're sucking up the most resources you can. It's a little bit competitive, you're side by side, but you're jostling for space in the forest. A mushroom is adapting to the environment down here. A mushroom can't grow in isolation. Like you can plant a tree, but you can't plant a mushroom. A mushroom is a community builder, a communicator, not particularly sexy, but it's like it's getting on with the business of existence and finding comfort in maybe a strange place.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful, Lloydie. And tell me about yoga in the west of Auckland, Wellness West, where you teach.
Yeah, so inspired by one of my amazing teachers, Carla Brody, she started offering yoga to people who were living with cancer, and she started doing that over a decade ago, and over time it sort of evolved into being for people with all sorts of chronic illnesses, whether that's tinana, like in the body, or in the brain, some sort of chronic mental health condition. And I saw what she was doing, and I thought it was so amazing. I assisted her on her classes, and then we came up with the plan to take it out west, because I really, really feel like everybody deserves a bit of comfort and ease. And often if you are in, if you're in treatment for some sort of chronic condition, you're constantly, things are changing, things are being done to you. You're in this sort of state of discomfort as you try and navigate your health. So like, what if you could just have 1 hour where it's all about your comfort. It's all about what you choose to do. You can choose to breathe, to lie down, to do a thing that I suggest, or you can just not. And so it's just like offering people, hey, here's this little space where you can just be completely at ease and hopefully learn some tools to take into all the rest of the crap that life is going to throw at you.
Yeah, amazing. And a couple of quick questions to end it. Has there been one moment that's happened where you're like, this is me, this is my purpose?
I think I get that every week when I teach. I wouldn't want to make any of my students feel self-conscious, but I can already see from when I started teaching in February to now the changes within them finding it a little bit easier to breathe, or maybe even finding it easier just to lie down on the floor and close your eyes, because that can be really hard. Yeah, I think that makes me, when I see someone just come and lie down on their blanket and like close their eyes, I'm like, beautiful.
And finally, this has been a fantastic interview. I love interviewing you. I love talking to you. Some advice for other Kiwis, just one piece of advice to help them.
I think curiosity is like my favourite thing at the moment. If you find yourself in a situation where you're not into it, if you can just ask yourself questions and gain some information about that, that's really, really powerful. Be curious.
Amazing. You make me very curious. Thank you very much for joining me, Kanoa Lloyd, a.k.a. Lloydie.
Thanks, Gowie.
Love you a lot.